He found his wife in bed with his boss. What he did next shocked the entire company. Mark Callahan pushed open the door to their downtown condo, a tired grin on his face. "Sarah, I'm home," he called out, dropping his carry-on bag. He'd cut his risk assessment trip to Chicago short, eager to surprise her. The silence that answered him was strange. He tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and walked toward the master bedroom, loosening his tie. "Sarah, you here?" He pushed the bedroom door open and froze. His grin dissolved. The man scrambling to cover himself wasn't him. It was David Vance, the CEO of his financial firm, the man whose signature was on his paychecks. And the woman beneath him, her eyes wide with panic, was Sarah, his wife of 12 years. The blood drained from Mark's face, leaving a cold, hollow shock. "Get out," Mark whispered, his voice dangerously calm. Sarah clutched the sheets. "Mark, it's not. We didn't." But David was already grabbing his expensive shirt, his arrogance replaced by a flicker of fear. He wouldn't even look Mark in the eye. He just dressed and fled, leaving Mark alone in the doorway with the ruins of his life. The silence in the bedroom was louder than any scream. Sarah sat clutching the silk sheets, the evidence of her betrayal cooling in the air. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "Please, just let me explain. It just happened. It didn't mean anything." Mark turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable. The man who usually obsessed over spreadsheets and risk margins looked completely hollow. He didn't shout. He didn't throw things. He simply looked at the rumpled bed, then at her, as if he were assessing a failed investment. "How long, Sarah?" he asked, his voice flat. She flinched. "A few months. Mark, he's the CEO. The dinners, the retreats. He's the CEO," Mark repeated, nodding slowly, as if confirming a data point. He walked over to his dresser, opened the top drawer, and took out his watch. He fastened it to his wrist with a steady hand. "Get dressed, Sarah. We need to talk about our assets." Sarah stared, bewildered. "Assets? Mark, I just destroyed our marriage, and you want to talk about assets?" He finally looked her in the eyes, and the cold calculation there made her shiver. "Yes," he said. "You made your choice. This is my consequence." The elevator doors opened on the 45th floor of Vance Financial. Mark stepped out, his suit immaculate, his tie perfectly knotted. The usual morning buzz of the trading floor died to whispers. Colleagues who had attended his summer barbecues suddenly found their shoes fascinating. Janice, the senior administrator with kind eyes, hurried over, her face a mask of concern. "Mark? Good morning. We weren't expecting you in." Mark gave her a thin, polite smile, his eyes like polished steel. "It's Monday, Janice. I'm here for the Q4 projections." He walked past her, his footsteps echoing. He reached his desk, sat down, and turned on his computer. 10 minutes later, an instant message flashed. "My office. Now. D. Vance." Mark picked up his tablet and walked to the glass-walled corner office. David was behind his desk, leaning back, trying to look relaxed. "Mark," he started, "about yesterday. Let's be two mature adults. I'm prepared to offer generous compensation. A promotion. We can make this right." Mark just stared, his face blank. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "I'm here to discuss the critical vulnerabilities I found in the new offshore investment fund, the one you personally manage. Or would you prefer we schedule a meeting with the SEC compliance officers first?" David Vance's practiced, corporate smile vanished, replaced by a dark flush. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Are you threatening me, Callahan? In my office?" Mark didn't flinch. He remained standing, holding his tablet like a shield. "I am a risk assessment analyst, Mr. Vance. I identify risks, and the offshore fund you launched last quarter is a significant one. The projections are inflated, the client disclosures are incomplete, and the way you've leveraged the assets against unsecured loans, it's not just aggressive, it's reckless." He swiped his thumb across the tablet. "I spent all night reviewing the portfolio. It seems your distractions have made you sloppy." David's face went pale. He knew exactly what Mark was talking about. This wasn't just an affair, it was potential corporate fraud. "You wouldn't dare," David hissed. "You'd be destroying your own career." Mark finally allowed himself a small, cold smile. "My career? You and Sarah already took care of that. I'm just an analyst managing risk. And right now, you are the biggest risk in this entire company. You have until 5 p.m. to announce your immediate retirement, citing personal health reasons. Or my full report goes to the board and the SEC. Your choice. The 45th floor of Vance Financial felt like a pressurized cabin. It was 4:30 p.m. and no one was working. Employees gathered in hushed groups, stealing glances at David's closed office, where he'd been shouting at lawyers for hours, and at Mark Callahan's desk. Mark wasn't pacing. He wasn't sweating. He was calmly auditing a high-yield investment portfolio, his mouse clicking with a steady, unnerving rhythm. Janice, the administrator, approached his desk, her hands trembling. Mark, what's happening? People are scared. Is the company? Are we in trouble? Mark looked up, his eyes softening just for her. It's just some financial restructuring, Janice. The company is simply managing its high-risk assets. Don't you worry. Just then, the elevator doors burst open. It was Sarah, her face pale, her eyes wild. Mark, she shrieked, causing the entire office to go silent. You have to stop this. What did you do? David called me. He said you're destroying the whole company. You're destroying me. Mark slowly stood up. Sarah, you are confusing destruction with consequences. You need to leave. No, she cried. I won't let you do this. At that exact moment, 4:59 p.m., a chime. A company-wide email landed. The subject line, a message from the board, the resignation of David Vance. The collective chime of the company-wide email was deafening in the silence. Sarah's phone buzzed in her hand. She stared at the subject line, her face draining of all color. Her accusation died in her throat. The entire office was motionless, every eye locked on one man. Mark Callahan didn't even look at her. He simply clicked his mouse, closing the investment portfolio he was reviewing. As Sarah stood there, shaking and suddenly irrelevant, the main elevator doors opened. Two figures emerged, Arthur Harrison and Eleanor Davies, the two most powerful senior partners on the board. They strode past David's now empty corner office and walked directly to Mark's desk, ignoring Sarah completely. Mr. Callahan, Arthur said, his voice booming in the stillness. The board has received and reviewed your detailed risk assessment and your proposed solution for the immediate financial restructuring. He put a hand on Mark's shoulder. We are in unanimous agreement. As of this moment, you are heading the transition team. We trust your judgment. The entire company stared, finally understanding. The quiet man they all pitted hadn't just exposed a liability. He had executed a flawless, surgical takeover. The office erupted, not in cheers, but in a wave of stunned, frantic whispers. People were looking at Mark Callahan like they had never seen him before. He wasn't the nice guy from risk assessment anymore. He was the man who had decapitated the firm's leadership in a single afternoon. Sarah let out a sound, a half-sob, half-gasp. Mark, please don't do this to me. Where will I go? He finally turned to her, his gaze clear and cold. That's a personal assets problem, Sarah, not a corporate one. He then turned to Janice, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. Janice, he said, his voice calm and firm, instantly taking command. Please schedule an all-hands meeting for 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be outlining the new financial restructuring plan. And please get a security team to escort Mrs. Callahan from the premises. Sarah's face crumpled. Security? Mark, I'm your wife. You were, he replied, turning to the board members. Arthur, Eleanor, if you'll join me in the conference room, we can begin liquidating David's high-risk retirement portfolio before the overseas markets open. He walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the middle of the floor, a relic of a life he had already written off. The 9 a.m. all-hands meeting was standing room only. The tension was thick enough to cut. Mark stood at the front podium, not with arrogance, but with a quiet, authoritative stillness. Good morning, he began, his voice steady. I know there are a lot of rumors. Let's deal in facts. David Vance's retirement was immediate and necessary. His private funds were mismanaged, and he exposed this firm to unacceptable risk. He paused, letting that sink in. My job was to assess that risk. Now my job is to fix it. Our client investments are secure. Your pensions are secure. A collective sigh of relief went through the room. We will be undergoing a full financial restructuring. We will focus on transparency and integrity. There will be no more closed-door deals. Your hard work will be rewarded based on merit, not favor. Later that day, he called Janice into his new office, David's old office. She was nervous. "Janice," he said, "you've been the administrative backbone of this floor for 20 years, with very little recognition. I'm promoting you to Chief of Operations. You've earned it." Janice's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan. It's Mark," he said, smiling for the first time. "We have work to do." A month later, Mark was at the Capitol Grill finalizing a new, ethical investment fund with two major clients. The downtown restaurant buzzed with quiet, expensive energy. "Your financial restructuring plan is bold, Mark," one client said, raising his glass. "Frankly, it's why we're back at the table." Mark smiled. "Transparency is the best asset. It's a low-risk, high-return strategy." As the client laughed, Mark caught a movement out of the corner of his eye. A waitress, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, was clearing a nearby table. She dropped a steak knife. As she bent to pick it up, her eyes met his. It was Sarah. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a black uniform. The arrogant confidence was replaced by raw exhaustion. She froze, humiliation washing over her face, and quickly fled to the kitchen. Later, as Mark was leaving, she intercepted him by the coat check. "Mark, congratulations," she whispered, her voice rough. "You won." He looked at her, his face unreadable. "It was never a game, Sarah. Please," she begged, tears welling. "David's retirement fund was a sham. The lawyers, he left me with nothing. I have no assets. I'm ruined." Mark paused, took his wallet, and placed $500 bills on the counter. "This is for your service tonight," he said, not unkindly. "But my assessment of our situation is final. Goodbye, Sarah." 6 months later, the 45th floor was unrecognizable. The dark, imposing walls of the executive offices had been replaced with frosted glass. The firm's name by the elevator now read Callahan Financial Group. It was 5 p.m. on a Friday, and the team was gathered for an impromptu celebration. The firm had just landed its largest ever investment client, one who had publicly cited the firm's newfound integrity. Mark Callahan, his tie loosened, leaned against Janice's new operations desk, laughing with a group of junior analysts. He wasn't a man defined by revenge. He was a leader defined by respect. Janice tapped a glass for attention. "Speech. Speech." The room cheered. She beamed. "I just want to thank you all. 6 months ago, we were a ship heading for the rocks. But Mark here," she said, raising her glass, "reminded us that our greatest asset isn't in an offshore account. It's right here. It's our integrity." Everyone applauded. Mark stepped forward, his smile genuine. "Thank you, Janice. You all did this. We just made a choice to build something transparent, something better. That's the real financial victory." The company, once shocked by his ruthlessness, was now shocked by his grace. He had lost a wife, but saved a family. He didn't just take his boss's job. He had built a legacy.